Hi everybody, today I'm going to talk you through how to manipulate data with text functions, and what we'll do is we'll go through a few of the exercises here, and that'll get you ready for what we're going to do in class next. Text functions, as I may or may not have already told you, are extremely important when it comes to doing things like cleansing your data or working with long text strings. It's really helpful to try to get data in some kind of order. There are not only text functions, but there are also tools that I'm going to show you as we go through this. So what you can do is, as we go through this, you can pause the playback and then try to go through it in your own file and come right back. So let's get started. So look at flash fill. Flash fill is a really cool new feature, and what you need to do is simply start typing. So let's say we want to get everybody's last name in here without any spaces. I just simply start typing, and you'll notice that a list pops up. It's detecting what I want to do. And I'm going to arrow down to the third cell there, and then there it is. It flash filled it for me. There are options where you can undo it, accept the suggestions, etc., etc. Let's do the same thing again with, sorry, that was me, with Faye. And there it goes. Pretty cool. However, we will strongly tell you, don't use flash fill on exams, because we do want to test other things that you can do. And we're going to look at bringing bits of text out in a number of different ways. Flash fill is a tool, but so is this. So try this. Take your mouse, select cell A4, Control, Shift, down arrow, and now you're going to go over to the Data tab, and on the ribbon under Data Tools, you'll see Text to Columns. Click that. And what happens is we get a Convert Text to Columns wizard, which allows you to do a few more things than flash fill does. Flash fill will not work on a lot of other things. If there are any irregularities with the data, it chokes. So what you want to do is maybe find more things to use. This one has a little more flexibility. It detects that we've got a delimited file, or thinks that we should, or delimited set of data. It will also work if you have fixed width data, and this is what this looks like. In your list, let's say you only want to get the first letter out of here for some odd reason. You can just click a breakpoint there. If you want to just get that out of there, you can click there. You can actually click or unclick anything that you want in order to pull out text. Of course, with irregular text, that doesn't work very well, but if you have fixed width text, like social security numbers and things like that, or zip codes that are all the same, that works really well. But we're going to go to delimited and click next. It always wants to believe that we've used tab. Well, not always. So what you want to do is tell it what it's delimited by, and we know we have a comma. Now, you should all see a problem here. And the problem in our data preview is that we have this space. So if we tell it comma, it's going to stick its little line right there where the comma was, and it's not going to consider the space a delimiter. If you're absolutely sure that the space is also a delimiter, in other words, you don't have people with two-barrel names like Mary and then Ann, or Mary Lou, or Joe Bob, or something like that, then you can go ahead and use the space. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that just to show you how we can clean that up later with a function. Click next, and we want to choose a destination that's not going to overwrite our original data, so I'm going to go into D4. pop back into the dialog, and finish. And just as easily, it gives us our data. And notice that it doesn't change the case of it. It just separates the data out the way it was supposed to be. Now, to clean up data, one of the functions that we can use is a function called trim. Trim will take out spaces that are extra, and it will leave one between words. So if you have triple spaces between words when only one is appropriate, it will strip out the extra ones and leave that alone. It'll also strip out extra spaces before and extra spaces after. Remember that characters count, or spaces count as characters, and I'll show you that graphically later. So I can take my dirty data for Faye, and I can choose the trim function to simply strip out any extra spaces that there are. And now you'll see that that space is gone. And I can show you why I know that by using a function called len. And this shows me that this 4-letter name, the cell contains 5 characters. If I show you what it's like after I use trim, it comes to 4 characters. An additional function that you can use is called clean. Clean will take out unprintable characters. And unprintable characters are things like carriage returns, tab characters, things that may import from certain character sets that will mess up your data, like spaces will. And so what I usually do when I'm cleaning data is I'll take and embed clean and trim together and just take care of it all at once. If they're unprintable, a lot of times they're not visible either. So that will take care of that. Further, if I were to erase this or overwrite it, I'd have some problems. Because if I deleted that, then I've deleted data. So if I want to save my cleaned data, then I'm going to take everything that I've just cleaned, select it with Control-Shift down, Control-C to copy, and then always do this, just go over and paste special and do values. So we're going to just only paste the values into that area so that we have clean data. Notice how now it's both 4 and 4. And if I change the data that I'm operating on, then I won't lose my changes. So that's good practice to always do. I'm just going to take this and delete it, and now I've got a clean set of data. One other thing that you can do, I just want to mention, is that there are other functions that will allow you to play with the case of words. And so proper, let's say I want Daniels to appear just like the last name does over there, I can do a proper function on that, and that's going to take care of my all caps there. Or I could do upper, which will put everything in uppercase, or I could do lower, which puts everything in lowercase. So if I wanted to once again take that data I've cleansed, select it, copy it, and then paste, go to the Home tab, we can do paste, and then under here we have values. And then our values are saved. Okay, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 functions that you can use that aren't necessarily going to be shown here for you. So you've also got, don't let me forget, you've got text to columns here, in addition to flash fill. Let's take a quick look at the text function summary. Crazy former colleague of mine decided it would be fun to put in to be or not to be, that is the question, the soliloquy from Hamlet, in order to demonstrate how things work in here. And we've got a nice explanation of what will happen when we use each of these functions. And here are the functions we're going to go through. Len, which I showed you, tells you how many characters are in the cell. Find versus search. Both of them do the same thing. One is case sensitive and one is not. Left will pull out the leftmost characters of something. Right, the rightmost characters in a cell. Mid, somewhere starting in the middle of a string, you can pull out what you'd like. Concatenate, or the ampersand, which is the and symbol, can put strings back together. Trim, clean, upper, lower, proper, as I explained before, those are functional in that they remove things that you don't want there or change case. So let's practice. Okay. So basically what you can do here is type in your name, or anybody's name. We've got Stephen Colbert. We kind of like him. We like Tom Petty too. So let's put Tom Petty in here. So on the left column here, we've got a bunch of things that say text functions. And all these do is demonstrate exactly what happens when you use them, such as left. If I type in equals left and my text, which happens to be in cell A2, and then how many characters I want, which happen to be 3, I'll get the left 3 characters in the name. Okay, so that will always work. If I change to my other favorite musician, Joe Bonamassa, I'll get Joe, or my name. I'll get APR, which does not in this case mean annual percentage rate. Anyway, jokes aside, let's go back to Tom. So every time you use the text function, everything should always remain. It should work for whatever you put in there. If I use the right function, then A2, if I want the right 3 characters in my name here, I'm going to get, what do you think? TTY. There you go. Okay. Find. So we're going to find the starting position of the character that we tell it. So if I said equals find, and I said I want to find the Y in Tom Petty, then what I'll find is a value, a number, kind of like match does for you in a VLOOKUP or an HLOOKUP. And it's going to tell me that that occurs from the left going toward the right in the 9th position. Okay. So if I also tell it that I want to see, let's say, the space, that'll tell me what position the space occurs in that string, and that's the 4th position. Why is that going to be handy? Well, it's going to be handy very much like match is handy in a VLOOKUP or an HLOOKUP or an index. It'll find something in a list and give you the number that it is in that list. And so that's going to be real helpful when we start trying to solve puzzles using text functions like we're going to do. The len function I showed you on the other sheet simply tells you how many characters there are in the string. Now, we saw that Y was the 9th position in Tom Petty. And so we could guess that the length of A2 is 9, and we'd be right. But look what would happen if I added a space to the end of it. Check it out. Y would still be 9, but that space adds an extra character to it. So you always want to be really careful checking for those as you go through your file. So that's how those work. So how are you going to find out some of these things? Questions are, how many characters are there in your first name? Don't be fooled. We're not going to count characters here, but what's going to tell us how many characters are in your first name? Well, what functions do we have over there that actually give us an integer as a result? Either find or len. Well, we can't use len because len gives us everything. So our only choice really is to use find. And what can we find? Well, we want to find something that will work for anybody. So if we put in any name, first and last name, it should work for anybody. So the only regular thing that appears there happens to be the space. So I'm going to find a space in A2, and that's going to tell me that there are 4 letters in my first name. Are there? Well, not in Tom's first name. Basically what you see here is that it tells you that the space is in the 4th position, but that's not part of the name. So all I can do is do a little trick of subtracting 1 from that, and that will tell me how many letters there are in my first name. Therefore, if I wanted to actually find out what my first name was in cell A2, then I can use that information by nesting the functions. So check it out. I want to find out what my first name is. Those are the left 3 characters in cell A2, but instead of just typing 3 this time, I'm actually going to use the find function, which is going to find the space in A2. We already know up above that that's too many, so I'm going to subtract 1, and that will result in the 3 that I'm looking for and give me Tom. Once again, that's going to work for everybody as I put any name in here. Okay. But I'm still going to hang on to Tom. So, now how do you figure out how many characters are in your last name? Well, this time we want to exclude the characters that are your first name and the space. How do you do that? Very easy. Remember over here the len function? The len function will tell you the entire number of characters in the string that we're looking at. And so we can do len, which will give us 9. And then we can find space where that occurs, and we know that occurs in the 4th position of A2. So len 9 minus find 4 should yield 5, which is exactly how many letters we have in Petty. What if we put Joe Bonamassa in there? How many letters does he have? 9. That's a heck of a name. How about me? 8. Okay, so again, it should work for everybody. Let's go back to Tom. Now, how do you pull out your last name? Well, what's the puzzle? Okay, I have my last name. It happens to be second or to the right in this string, and these functions will always be looking directionally. So if I'm going to look at the right side of my cell, I should use the right function. Right, unlike left, is going to actually start from the right and move toward the left. Left starts from the left and moves towards the right. So we're going to find the rightmost characters in cell A2, but we only want it to be our last name. So I'm going to take the length of that cell minus where the space is. Oops, I do that all the time. And then I'm going to close the right function, and that should give us Petty. Always check, you guys, like with Tom here, we did it right, but if I did it wrong, it looks good, doesn't it? Still looks okay. But if I did a len function to check my work, I'd find out that space, that nasty space, was sitting there. So always, 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 when you're doing something like this, check your len, or your length of the characters. Otherwise, you'll get it wrong on an exam, because we will be checking that exact answer. We'll be using that function to see how many characters there are. If we expect 3 and we see 4, ding, you lose points. So be sure to always do some math on that, or try building it from the inside out. Start with a find and see what you get, and then adjust it mathematically, and then put it inside of your other function. Finally, putting things together. Aren't we sick of Tom? Let's do somebody else I like. So we've got 2 names in separate cells, and how do we put them back together? Easily. You can do this in any number of ways. It all does the same thing. The easiest one is to simply join things with an ampersand. So you do an equal, and then your cell address, an ampersand, any character that you want to put in there, such as a space, another ampersand, and the final cell. And there's the name. We could go backwards if we wanted. Notice I put a comma and a space there, so I could do last name, comma, first name. The other one is the function CONCATENATE, which strings things together. And so we can once again just click, comma, extra characters in quotes, comma, and then our final one. So here you have everything you always wanted to know about text functions, but might have been afraid to ask. There you go. It should work for anything that you do. So that's your goal, is to have flexibility there. Here are some exercises, and you can see where sometimes things are going to work for you and sometimes they're not using flash fill. Try these as a review, and then there are other review problems. These are always fun, and I like to call them puzzles, not problems, because they're kind of fun to think about. In class, what we're going to be doing is working on a file, the other file that has an 11 in front of it, called More Members. So please be ready to go. We're going to rush through that together. And then that file is going to be the basis for some of the work that we do as we start databases. And that's it for text functions.